Everyone and their mom has talked about the American Revolution, but what caused it to happen? First, we have the French-Indian War. This was a war fought between the French, Native Americans, and the British. This is for dominance of the Ohio River Valley, one of the most powerful points because of the massive river system connected to it. This war had many British and French soldiers die, and eventually gave the country massive debt, and they were trying to pay it off. This will indeed come back eventually. Let's just say that for the Greater Revolution, this was arming a weapon in terms of how it was set up. Next, we have the Proclamation of 1763. It limited settler expansion past the Appalachian Mountains. This may not have had a major hand in causing the revolution, but it happened and people probably got set up. Now, that's not that important, so let's move on. So now we have the Navigation Act of 1763. It basically made it so a boat can only have, let me check my script. No, the colonies could only trade with Britain, and a large portion of a ship's crew had to be British. 3/4 of the crew and the captain had to be British, to be exact. But this could potentially anger some sailors, but might have not been major enough to provoke a war. But this could have definitely caused unrest and inequity with British and settlers to brew. Next, we have the Sugar Act. It was a tax on many products and arrested smugglers who sold them. This act was passed on Thursday, April 5th, 1764, and was to pay off debt. And if you broke it, well, you're going on a prison boat. Next, we have the Quartering Act. This allowed British soldiers to stay in colony houses, and the colonists had to give them food and water. Now, this is one of the most important because the French-Indian War was essentially setting the bomb. This was lighting the bomb. It's the Stamp Act and Repeal. The Stamp Act was passed by the British to tax the colonies by placing a stamp on many documents, including cards, legal documents, and deeds. This was passed in 1765 and hit all of the colonies. This act was to pay off the billions of debt from the French-Indian War. I said it would come back. This was a stamp that costs money to be placed, which was mandatory. After this was passed, the House of Burgesses' resolution to the Stamp Act was a petition that was published shortly after. Then the Stamp Act Congress was held, which also made a petition and did a boycott. Third, the Sons of Liberty, which was made in Virginia, and sent a letter to make a Stamp Act collector resign. After all this, the British repealed the Stamp Act, but they made the Declaratory Act. Now, remember that weapon analogy? Wait, no, I already mentioned that. Now we have the Declaratory Act. This was saying that the British had equal taxing rights in all the colonies and Britain. Like, basically, we have control over your land. It's ours. Your governments mean nothing to us. Now, because some of the New Yorkers got a bit angry, they suspended the New York Assembly because they weren't complying with the Quartering Act. Pretty important. Now, we have the Townshend Act. This included the suspension of the New York Assembly. It taxed goods, made a customs group branch, whatever. Not much to say about this one. Now we have the Writs of Assistance, I'm pretty sure it's called. This was a search warrant put up by the British to search any home or house or building, I'm pretty sure, for smuggled goods with the sheriff's approval. The British could just basically... you did need to have a sheriff approval. Now, the second event after the French-Indian War, where, blood was shed, the Boston Massacre. It started off with some patriots throwing snowballs at redcoats, then they eventually turned into rocks, and then the redcoats, they fired. Next up, a group, the one and only, the Committees of Correspondence. This is a group of patriots who wrote letters about British actions to other patriots leaders during and before the Revolution. Now, if this doesn't float in the school book, this project, then this event won't float either. The Gatsby Incident. It was a boat that was burned down off the coast of Providence, Rhode Island, on July 9th, 1772, after it ran in pursuit of a sugar smuggler because the commander was a meanie poo-poo pants. You know who the Monopoly Man is, right? Well, the British became him with this one. The Tea Act and Monopoly. This made so the East India Company had monopoly on selling tea in the colonies. This also provided a symbolic tax. After this, the Boston Tea Party occurred as a result. Now my favorite tea party. Oh wait, there's no biscuits and the tea is in the ocean. Time for global warming to get the tea hot. The Boston Tea Party. The Boston Tea Party was a protest that happened on December 16th, 1773. This protest had people raiding British tea supplyment boats and throwing the product into the Boston harbor. The protesters tried to hide their identities by dressing up as Native Americans to hide their identities so the British don't harass them or punish their families. Now this is just intolerable. The Intolerable Acts, or the corrosive acts as I will be calling it later. This was a series of acts after the Boston Tea Party to enforce the colony's strictness, including closing the port in Boston until damages for the tea was paid, the royal governor being able to appoint a council. The next one was the Justice Act, which allowed the royal government to move trials to other colonies or England. And finally, one that really wasn't a part of the act was the Quebec Act, which gave Christians preference. Now, you know Congress. Back in my day, the Continental Congress was the only one we had. This was the first Continental Congress. It had a boycott after it and then a British response. This opened on September 5th, 1774 in Philadelphia and took a whole 7 weeks to end, with leaders from almost all the colonies responding to British actions. Some probably had more radical ideas and some probably had more loyal ideas, so a lot of arguing took place just like in normal Congress. Oh no! The British are here in a minute! Who will I call? Call the Minutemen. We can get mobilized in a minute. Yeah, it's the Minutemen. This was a group of people, a militia group in Massachusetts that was ready to fight the British in a minute's notice. Get it? Minute. Ready to fight in a minute. Minutemen. So funny. Then the Second Continental Congress encouraged more colonies to appoint Minutemen. No one has said anything about those coercive acts. Let's see what's going on. Okay, it's the Fairfax Resolves. The Fairfax Resolves were protests to the coercive acts while being organized by some George Washington fellow. I've never heard of him. What else will he do? Once the British get this letter, they resolve... the resolve, they suspend the House of Burgesses. Now, as I've said, the French Indian War was setting the bomb, the Stamp Act was lighting the bomb, and now, this is the bomb exploding. Lexington and Concord. These were battles that took place, sparking the Revolution. This was most important because it caused everything to blow and start it. Then what happens next is history. We win the Revolution. Yeah, it's history. Yeah, thanks for watching my video.